A grandfather came for a visit and found his disabled grandson exiled to the garage. For 3 months, a grieving boy slept on concrete while a family pretended everything was fine. One unexpected visit exposes cruelty, silence, and a grandfather who refuses to look away. The night was not meant to be spent in Portland. A chemistry symposium at the downtown Hilton ended a full 2 hours early. The presenter from Stanford had wrapped up his lecture on polymer chains ahead of schedule, leaving attendees with an unexpected gift of time. Samuel Jenkins had driven 3 hours from his home in Eugene. His initial plan was to simply check into his hotel room order room service and review his notes for the next day. He was retired now, but he still enjoyed keeping up with the latest developments. Yet as he sat in the nearly empty conference hall, a different idea took root. He thought of his son, Michael. He thought of his grandson, Lucas. It had been almost a month since he had seen them. What was another 45 minutes on the road for a surprise evening visit? The thought of Lucas's smile sealed the deal. Samuel gathered his briefcase and overcoat and made for the parking garage. His old Ford F-150 truck started with its familiar rumble, and he pointed it toward the suburbs. The neighborhood was quiet when Samuel pulled into the driveway just after 9:15. It was a cold December Friday. The house was a handsome 4-bedroom ranch-style home in a well-kept subdivision. Christmas lights still adorned the eaves, twinkling with cheerful persistence against the deep winter dark. 2 cars were parked in the driveway. Everything appeared perfectly normal, perfectly peaceful. Samuel expected to see the warm glow of the living room lamps through the front window. Perhaps the flickering blue light of the television. He imagined his grandson at the kitchen table, maybe finishing up some homework. He turned off the truck engine and sat for a moment simply looking at the house. It was then that he noticed the anomaly. A faint yellow light seeped from the edges of the attached garage door. Not the bright white glare of the overhead fluorescent fixture, but a dim murky glow like that from a small battery-powered lantern. The side service door to the garage was slightly ajar, just a crack. A strange feeling settled in Samuel's chest. He got out of the truck and closed the door softly behind him. The cold air bit at his face. As he walked closer to that sliver of light, he heard it. A sound that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Crying. Quiet, muffled crying. The kind of crying someone does when they are trying with all their might not to be heard. His heart began to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He pushed the garage door open slowly. The hinges gave a soft groan. The interior was brutally cold. Samuel could see his own breath plume in the air. The space smelled of old motor oil and damp concrete. Tools hung neatly on pegboard walls. A workbench sat in the corner, covered in a fine layer of sawdust. And there in the far corner, under the shadow of a metal storage shelf, was a sight that made his blood run cold. A thin sleeping bag was spread on the concrete floor. It looked cheap, the kind bought on clearance. Next to it sat a small camping lantern casting that weak yellow light. Beside the lantern was a stack of library books, their covers worn and frayed. And on that sleeping bag, huddled in a heavy jacket with a knit cap pulled low, sat his 14-year-old grandson, Lucas. His wheelchair was parked beside him like a silent companion. The boy's face was buried in his hands, and his thin shoulders shook with the force of his silent sobs. Samuel's voice caught in his throat. It came out rough and strangled. "Lucas!" The boy's head snapped up. Panic flashed across his face, a deer in headlights terror, before recognition slowly dawned. "Grandpa?" he whispered, his voice raw. "What are you doing here?" Samuel crossed the garage in 3 long strides, his dress shoes loud on the concrete. He knelt down beside his grandson, his aging knees protesting the hard, cold surface. Up close he could see the details, and each one was a knife to his heart. Dark purple circles hung under Lucas's eyes like bruises. His face was gaunt, thinner than it should be. The jacket he wore was clearly too small, the sleeves ending several inches above his bony wrists. On his hands, he wore fingerless gloves, and even with them, Samuel could see his skin was red and chapped from the cold. "Lucas," Samuel said, keeping his voice low and gentle, though every instinct screamed to roar. "What are you doing out here, buddy?" The boy wiped his face hastily with his sleeve. He wouldn't meet Samuel's eyes. "I live here now," he said. The statement was delivered with a heartbreaking matter-of-factness. Then he seemed to remember himself. "Does Dad know you're here?" "No," Samuel said. "I surprised everyone. The conference ended early." He looked around the garage again, really seeing it this time. He noticed a case of store-brand bottled water, a cardboard box with a few granola bar wrappers spilling out, a small blue plastic storage bin that likely held clothing. The pieces began to click together, forming a picture he desperately did not want to see. "What do you mean you live here?" Samuel asked slowly. Lucas studied a stain on the concrete floor. "Jennifer needed the house for her projects. She said the garage was just temporary, just until they figured out a better arrangement." He paused and added softly, "That was 3 months ago." 3 months. The words echoed in the cold, empty space. 3 months of his grandson sleeping on a concrete floor in an Oregon December. Samuel felt a hot surge of anger rise in his throat, but he swallowed it down. He needed to understand. "Lucas," he said gently, "how many bedrooms does this house have?" "4," the boy mumbled. "And who has them?" "Olivia has one. Chloe has one. Jennifer turned the 4th one into her craft room. She makes custom wreaths and does scrapbooking. She said she needed a dedicated space for her creativity." He recited this like a lesson he had been forced to memorize. Samuel took a slow, deliberate breath. The air was so cold it hurt his lungs. "Where do you eat dinner, Lucas?" The boy shrugged a small, defeated motion. "I usually microwave something. There are frozen dinners in the freezer in here." He gestured with his chin toward an old chest freezer humming against the far wall. "It's easier than bothering everyone." "Bothering everyone?" Samuel repeated the words, tasting their bitter meaning. Lucas finally looked up at his grandfather. In his eyes, Sam.